Now it is the time for the topic du jour. Brie Joy Gray facing off, hanging out, interviewing. I'm not sure what to expect at all from this. Gavin, will you put the link in our private chat? I'll pull it up from the PC.
Like I said, I am interested to see how this goes. And whether or not it was a good idea for Briahna to actually engage with Candace Owens, because obviously a lot of people have been accusing Brie Joy Gray of being anti-Semitic and saying that that's actually the reason why the Hill fired her, not just for criticizing the government of Israel, but actually for affirmatively being anti-Semitic. Now, that's not true. But it is true that Candace Owens has just straight up trafficked in anti-Semitism, defending Kanye West to this day on Piers Morgan the other day, completely embarrassing herself by refusing to admit that Kanye West is anti-Semitic, stuff like that. You know, she sucks. She's terrible. And she gives a terrible name to people that do support Palestine in good faith for non-anti-Semitic reasons. That's my opinion, at least. I think she's demonstrated that over and over and over again. And also, you know, even when she does say the right thing, she's still not very good at it. Like if you watch her Piers Morgan interview from the other day, she couldn't even explain why Israel was committing genocide. She couldn't even answer the question. So she actually does a great disservice, in my opinion, to people that speak out against Israel and people that advocate for the lives of Palestinians. And I'm hoping Briahna doesn't just kind of fall for the bait and give ammunition to her critics by associating with this known anti-Semite. Let's take a look, though.
Her shocking response to sister of Hamas hostage. So I was like, wow, what did Briahna say? She must have just been off the rails crazy. It's not what I got. Very, very excited, Briahna, to have you join us here today. I know you're in the midst of a firestorm. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. And I really do appreciate you reaching out, Candace, as someone who has been through this not so unique experience. I was going to say unique experience, but increasingly it's happening as I think more and more journalists who might not have focused on this particular issue in the past find themselves doing so, informing themselves and finding themselves on the quote unquote wrong side of this issue when it comes to censorship. So I really do appreciate you reaching out.
And it's interesting to have you and I speaking because we are not on the same side of the political aisle. I mean, you are a person, your background, you were the spokesperson for the Bernie Sanders campaign. I mean, I was very much identified as a Trump supporter about as far as you could be in the media's eyes when he was running in 2016. And yet we do find ourselves allied in the belief that people in America should be able to criticize the actions of foreign governments without having their entire livelihoods risked. This is not normal. And yet there are so many people who know, like I know and like you know, that if you are in media, you got to be careful talking about Israel. Why is that?
Yeah, it really is the one true red line. And I think you experienced that as being part of a media organization that I think rightly really prioritized and focused on various threats to free speech in various different contexts and across the political spectrum. But it really does feel like free speech except for when it comes to Israel, progressive except for when it comes to Palestine. I mean, there is this Palestine-sized hole or exception in a lot of people's principled stance against various issues. And I say progressive except for Palestine because there are similarly people on the left who say that they care about various groups, who say that they are anti-war, but who very similarly will look the other way or frankly become very oppositional when suddenly the people that we're talking about who are being under siege in a conflict are in fact Palestinian.
Yeah, those are the same types of liberals who will throw anybody under the bus, by the way. As soon as the going gets rough, it's not your time anymore. It's somebody else's time, right? It's white women's time again. You know, let's make white women the face of the Democratic Party again. You know, they'll go for something innocuous like that. Let's talk about climate broadly, right? It's always the same people that fall for that trap. So if you're progressive except for Palestine, you might be progressive except for immigration now, right? Oh, because Joe Biden, he's like, well, actually, it really is unmanageable, the flow of people that are seeking asylum in this country, right? So you can always spot a shit lib like that. What Brianna's pointing out is that they're obviously, I wouldn't even use the term progressive to describe those people, right? And honestly, I don't even know how much I'm in love with the term progressive at all. I don't want this to be progress, right? I want this to be compassion. I want this to be the way that morality is fucking brought out by our government, right? I want us to say we're going to live by the values that we've professed for generations for once in our fucking lives. But anyway, I'm diatribing because I am
And
back.
it's particularly interesting to see the way the media reports on these incidents. And I see it already in how they're speaking about your firing because they don't actually say what it is that you said that was controversial. I saw this when I left Daily Wire. Andrew Klavan does this episode. He's like, she was saying things in a way, but he can't actually point to what I said because actually there was something that I said that was controversial.
Which is crazy that she's just now learning this about conservative media. It's like, did you wake up for the first time in your entire life and start thinking with your caps screwed on correct? Like, what the fuck, bro? Like, oh, they couldn't actually challenge me, so they were just taking a bunch of things that I said out of context and alluding to things that I didn't say. Yeah, no shit. You worked for that publication, that rag sheet, that fucking outlet, if you will, for a long time. You didn't become familiar with their tactics then? You should be coming out here, Candace, and saying, unsurprisingly, the same shit I saw every day, them doing to other people, they're now doing to me because I decided to piss them off. See, all that shit that we did to slander anybody who dared run anywhere close to the left of us, which is anybody to the fucking left of George Bush at this point, the Daily Wire, right? Anyway, long story short, for her to it's kind of like, okay, bro, like, what did you expect, right? You play with fire, you're going to get burned. The Daily Wire treated you the same way you treated everybody this entire time you were at the Daily Wire. What distinguishes somebody from like Briahna Joy Gray from Candace Owens is that Briahna actually was acting in good faith throughout all of the times at the Hill. She was willing to have these discourses. What she wasn't willing to do was have somebody lie to her face and, like, you know, try and put her down and, you know, make some sort of like weird woke scold to her on the way out, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Also, we talked a lot at the time when Candace Owens did get fired by the Daily Wire. Like, you know, would she be able to come back? Would she be able to retain her relevance after being let go from such a big platform? And honestly, much like Tucker Carlson, I don't think she's done a super amazing job of staying as relevant
You kind of
as she
forecast
was.
that. I was skeptical. I was like, attractive woman going out on her own for the right wing. It's a match made in heaven. Of course, she's going to be successful. That was kind of my thinking. Chose my, like, you know, fucking.
She's kind of embarrassed herself since then. I don't know if you were. I think you might have been in the bathroom or something. But I was referencing this Piers Morgan interview.
Oh, I was listening.
Yeah. She totally embarrassed herself. She was talking about how Bridget Macron is actually a man.
They love doing that shit. The right wingers love doing that shit. They used to pretend that Michelle Obama was a man.
They still claim that
which
Michelle
is like
Obama
one of the
is a
most
man.
like, which is a fucked up, like, you know, and obviously it doesn't have the same racial element in France, but just what the fuck, like, why would you play into that?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But in the same way that as soon as Tucker got fired from Fox, he immediately started talking just to wackadoos like the ex-gay lover of Obama, right? Candace immediately Catturd 01. Yeah, Candace immediately runs into the arms of just the absolute craziest fringe of the right wing. Again, trafficking in conspiracy theories about Bridget Macron being a man and stuff like that. And it's just like, you know, if you want to come out here and talk about how you're the victim of censorship and stuff, Candace, you really should try a bit harder to, you know, keep your credibility intact, because now you're just giving us a bunch of reasons why a company would want to fire someone like you for just being such a fucking ignorant douchebag. So yeah, I don't think that Candace Owens has done a great job in the wake of her firing. Maybe she has some grand plan. Maybe she's going to launch a new media outlet soon. Who knows? But right now, yeah, I don't know, man. It's not the best place for her career, in my opinion.
You know, she is charging, you know, a couple G's if you're not a broke boy to get some free advice. Yeah. So, you know, give her a ring.
And by the way, that's not even a knock on Brie for going on the show. I don't necessarily. I mean, we'll see how this conversation goes. I have yet to make up my mind on whether or not it was a good idea.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is it's like, obviously Briahna can go anywhere she wants to, but it's just going to be like, you know, another one of those things where it's like, oof, yeah. Like, is it a good look to retweet like Jake Shields like a week after he got fired for promoting Palestine? Like, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that. That guy's an anti-Semite, right? I don't want to be associated with anti-Semites. It's like, well, you know, but on the other hand, that does not make what the Hill did right. Yeah. So we're doubling down on that. We're not Matt Taibbi over here.
And I'm still hoping that Brie actually calls out, you know, Candace Owens for actually being anti-Semitic, because there's just a difference. Like the Daily Wire, although I do think they fired Candace over criticisms of Israel, not bigotry, there was both, right? Like both absolutely
Well, that's
existed.
what's crazy about the Daily Wire situation with Candace Owens is that they were actually like low key chill with the bigotry. Like,
Oh, right.
They
like
were
with the
gonna
Kanye
be-
West defense and
dude,
stuff.
in the Kyrie stuff, like,
Yeah.
and like, I'm not even trying to take shots at Kyrie. Like, you know, they're already going through enough with the final situation for people who follow that. Anyway, long story short is that they didn't care about that. They didn't care about the Kanye stuff. They didn't care about, you know, people supporting Donald Trump after he endorsed the Charlottesville incidents and all
Right.
that tacitly by not condemning it. There were bad people on both sides, right? Remember all that. They don't care about that. The line in the sand was when she was explicitly going after Israel, and I think that's what's worth unpacking.
It
Right,
is.
and that is the through line here. I understand your skepticism, Gavin, where you're like you want to see some conflict between these two people. What I think is the difficulty in expecting that is I definitely think the framework that the two of them are operating on is that this is like a solidarity between two people that have been fired from their jobs on opposite ends of the political spectrum stream. And I don't know. I'm not anticipating that it does get to.
I hear that. My
Um,
only issue with it is that if I was Briahna, I would actually be mad and annoyed at people like Candace Owens, because now all these critics of Briahna are just assuming that, oh, you're just like Candace Owens. You're blaming Israel for getting fired, but actually you're just a rotten anti-Semite. You know what I'm saying? And Candace Owens being such a high-profile example of someone who did exactly that, it does, you know, create that you know, illusion for some people that, oh, that's just what's happening now with Briahna. So if I were Brie, I'd be like, no, we're not part of the same movement. You can't claim to be some humanitarian who got fired for being anti-war. No, you are a fucking rotten anti-Semite, and you just happened to cross this line not because you actually care about Palestinians or Muslims, but because you wanted to trigger your Jewish boss. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's definitely like a fair POV, and it's one that I kind of operate under as well. I just don't think it's the same one that Brianna's using right now. I think that, to be honest, she's kind of feeling the opposite way. I think I think if I want to, like, you know, try and stand in Brianna's shoes and try and imagine how she's feeling about this, all we can do as commentators, right? I think she might be feeling like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. I'm the one that just lost my job. I'm the one that just lost these opportunities. I'm the one that woke up at fucking 4 a.m. every single fucking day and wrote my monologues and got to the fucking studio and dealt with Robbie fucking Swub's dumb shit all the time and grinded it out and stood up for my convictions after my friend got fired for the same shit that I was about to go out there and say. And I was going to put myself on the line day after day after day after day and fight in the trenches and eat shit from the comment section. I did it all. And I think her perspective right now is like, fuck you. I'll go anywhere I want to talk about what the fuck happened to me. And I'll retweet anybody I agree with. I don't endorse everything everyone says. So I don't care if I disagree with them on 90% of the things. I agree with them on this one thing. And I think she's just ready to say, fucking torch me, bro. I'll fuck up all of you. I'm smarter than you. I know what's in my heart. I know who I am as a person, and you can't reach me. And that is, you know, I think that's where, from what I've seen so far, I think that's where it is. Now, you and I can sit over here as two guys who, you know, we've never lost our jobs for fucking what we've said, thankfully, but we've, you know, also don't have a fucking platform.
I lost my job at Minsky's for posting a communist.
That man lived his values over there. He tried to unionize the Minsky's Pizza right there, and it did not go well for him. All right. You know, it turns out you can't begin your union efforts in a group chat that's moderated by your management. Fucking go figure. But this guy over here, he dreamed big and he swung big. So anyway, Gavin's short-lived tenure in the service industry, but it's okay. He can claim it. You know, this man's washed dishes before. You know what I mean?
Yeah, luckily Mission Taco still took me.
Anyway, I just think that that's her POV right now, and she's entitled to her perspective, and she's entitled to, like, make the run that she wants to, even though, I would be feeling a lot more along the lines of what your analysis is, Gavin, being like, fuck you and your, like, false fucking, you know.
Yeah. And again, it's like with Candace Owens, it's not even just the Kanye stuff. It's like she did the whole documentary about how Derek Chauvin didn't actually murder George Floyd. And like, she's a literal Nazi. Like, I'm sorry, but she is. So that's why I defended that one dude, Liam O'Mara, remember one
Dude, dude, you got railed in the comment section for that. I'm like skeptical we should even relive that for you.
Probably
because go, guys, that's a Twitter rabbit hole where I was like, bro, you're on your own. You are on your own. All right. This might become the Zac guard. Somebody's gonna take Gavin out. No, I'm kidding. That was
anyway. Let's take
didn't even have any
let's take a
viewers.
look at some more of this
Gavin's
because
like, let's change the subject actually.
Lest you view a certain race to be just above critique, really is what it is. If you view a certain race to be above critique. And I found that when I was being lied upon by a man named Rabbi Barclay. I mean, he lied so badly about me that PJ Media wound up taking the article down after I interviewed him, because I was genuinely curious. Like, how could you say you're a rabbi, you're supposed to be a leader in your community, and you're publishing lies about things that I never said. And when he spoke to me, he was very honest. And I realized, okay, he's actually just a racial supremacist. He's telling me that he believes that, if Jewish blood is shed, it does in fact matter more. When it is Jewish history, it matters more. And I appreciated his honesty, and I could see why we were going to be on the wrong side of this issue, because I don't believe in racial supremacy, whether it's coming from BLM leaders talking about their list of demands for white people. I don't believe in racial supremacy if it's white people, and I certainly am not going to accept it if it's Jewish people. That's not something that anyone should.
This is where the pitch has been thrown. If Briahna's gonna take a swing at Candace Owens and bite her head off, right here is where it would come.
Yeah,
because I can tell you that if that had come out of Robbie's mouth, we would have heard about it.
Well, it'll come as no surprise to you, Candace, that I feel differently about when we can get more specific about your qualms with BLM. But with respect to Israel, I do think that what has become increasingly clear.
That's what I think. That was kind of what I was guessing. She just doesn't want to fight with her on this stream. She's going to be like, yeah, we disagree with that, but let's talk about Israel.
To people is that the ideology that sort of justifies a Jewish state created in the middle of an Arab land really requires a commitment to basically expelling, ethnically cleansing, and even committing what has been described by the ICJ as a plausible genocide against a population so that there can be a Jewish majority. And I know that's a sort of uncomfortable fact, but it's one that I think many people are coming to when you start to question why it is that Israel has made the choice to treat 5 million people who are in constructively occupied territory in both the West Bank and Gaza as second-class citizens for years and years, not to mention the 20% of Israel's population who are subject to about 60 different laws that discriminate against them in terms of housing, employment, and in other kinds of arenas. And it all comes down to when you start to listen to people explain why they think it's acceptable to, for example, kill over 270 Palestinians and murder so many children the way we saw just a few days ago in Gaza to rescue 3 hostages. You have people very openly saying it's justified. It would have been justified to kill 500, 1,000 Palestinians if it meant getting 3 hostages back. And I certainly understand prioritizing hostage exchange. And this is what I told to the sister of the hostage that I spoke to on Rising last week. Certainly, if you want to prioritize hostage exchange, I agree with that. And we should be talking about the protests that are being put on by the families of hostages in Israel against Netanyahu, because they rightly perceive him as being the primary obstacle to prioritizing hostage exchange over what he has said is his priority, which is eliminating Hamas. All that.
Yeah, so I mean, everything that she says here is 100% correct. I just think that the problem is that the audience that she's saying all that to is going to turn around and use it to be like, the Jews run the world, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. We even have to root that out of our conversation or out of our chat section sometimes when I'm like, I'm actually uncomfortable with conclusions you guys are drawing. Let's think a little deeper about this. Let's remember that you yourself live as a citizen in a country,
settler colonial,
which is a settler colonial empire, which has far more power globally than Israel does, and has committed far greater atrocities in its name by orders of magnitudes. Before you get hoity-toity about it, the United States runs the world, and it's people like you who reap the most benefit of it, right? We remind our audience of that all the fucking time because you need to, because people will just look at the fucking horrible atrocities. They'll finally see pictures of it. It's actually something that I think we should unpack more. And we can talk about it for a little bit, Gavin, because I'm actually curious what you think about this. One of the really unique things about this atrocity, this absolute depravity that's unfolding, and it has been a sustained depravity, a sustained horror beyond any of our fucking imaginations. I mean, when it was 10-7 and Gavin and I were out here arguing with people that were saying like, you're a Hamas sympathizer, and we're like, no, we don't want them to just start fucking mercilessly killing Palestinians, which is what we all knew was coming because we had brains, right? And there were a lot of dummies on the left that was like, these Hamas terrorists have to be punished. And it's like, bro, you are literally fanning the jingoist fervor that is about to last for months and months and months and months and lead to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dead people, starved people, right? Untold suffering. But what I want to get to, I'm beating around the bush because it's hard to talk about, right? You don't know how to talk about this thing. We're a comedy show where we do lowbrow shit and we roast people for a living, but this is a real fucking hard issue to talk about. And it's also unique because the reality is it's like we've never seen these kinds of images before, right? They've always been blurred. They've always been moderated. They've always been shielded from us unless you really worked your way to find them. Like, obviously, Gavin and I grew up at a time in the Obama administration that, like, yeah, when you were 12, you probably saw a guy get his head cut off on the internet. And we could talk about how that changed society. But it wasn't this kind of real fucking moment now where we're watching children. I've never seen images like what I've seen now. I know what the inside of a fucking human body looks like, guys. I never knew what it fucking looked like. You've seen babies that are like have half their fucking sides missing, they're dead. You see babies that are alive, but they don't fucking look like it. You see like fucking crazy shit, man. It's horrible. And we've never had to go through that before as a society. We've never had it fucking thrust in our face. People don't know how to respond to that. And on one hand, I feel like we have to see that, right? Don't look away. Feel the pain. Be miserable. Be uncomfortable. Like, my whole body is tight and hot now because I'm talking about it. I have to think about what I've seen, right? Everybody should experience that because it's a fucking minutia. It's a modicum of what these people have fucking felt. You ever listen to the videos of the fathers fucking screaming and crying because their kids are dead? You never fucking unhear that shit. You never unhear that shit. It's almost like the kind of shit that kept people awake in the middle of the night when they went to war. It's not the same because you don't have the visceral fear of like violence coming onto you, but in your brain, it kind of replicates that all. And in the past, people, we've always said it's not dignified to look at it. We've always said, oh, you shouldn't look at that. It's not good for the dead. It's not good. Whatever. Don't do it. Don't show it to people. Well, now we fucking, all bets are off. You see it all. And part of me is like, is that it's good for us because it forces us to understand our horror. But it's also like, at what point are we not valuing every single one of those fucking bodies who was a human being that lost their fucking life, that had just as much of a story as I do, that had just as much of a fucking hopes, dreams, aspirations. They all loved their families, right? All that shit. What is it desensitizing us to these people? Why do we let these people be the ones that we see all this, like, just completely been as they've been dehumanized, and yet we still do nothing? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's why this, and is that right or is that wrong? And how do you respond to it while you're also still suffering under the like fucking post late stage capitalism of our own government and trying to make enough money to eat, live, survive, have a good time, have your own fucking selfish aspirations and goals? It's a wild thing. All that's going on in the background, and I don't know.
Yeah. Do you want to watch a little bit more of the interview?
Yeah.
That being said, there are ways to get the hostages back. It is evident and could have gotten back months and months ago if that were in fact a priority. But instead, the cost, the value of Palestinian life is perceived as so cheap as compared to Israeli lives that we've seen instead that they would rather do these military organizations with the help of the U.S. government using a U.S.-built pier that cost $300,000, was told it was a humanitarian pier, using an action that was in fact a war crime, using a humanitarian vehicle to Trojan horse military officers into a refugee camp, and then kill almost 300 Palestinians in the effort to get 3 hostages back, and also killing losing an Israeli soldier at the same time. Does that really seem worth it? I think the average person says no. And the only reason you come to a yes is if you really very cheaply value lives are not Israeli.
And that's where I'm getting at, where I say it actually is what we're talking about is just racial supremacy. You know, I don't know a single person who was not horrified by what happened on October 7th, who obviously wants every hostage to be returned because we value the lives of the innocent, full stop. It doesn't matter to me if that's an innocent Palestinian.
It's funny, though, because Netanyahu actually does not want the hostages to be freed. That gives away a lot of his leverage. That's why he stood in the way of it over and over and over and over again.
In life, whether it's an innocent Israeli life. And as soon as I was saying this is equal to me, suddenly all of these attacks started. And I really did feel like what was happening after October 7th is very reminiscent to me of what was happening after 9/11 and growing up in the 9/11. And I look back on that time because I realized that.
You mean when you became a Republican and cheerleaded all of our fucking nation building and worked with all of the biggest cheerleaders for neoconservative politics? Dude, what the fuck? Until 2016, when everybody on the fucking political right decided that they were going to hitch their wagon to Donald Trump, who fucking decided that we'd spent too much money fucking around overseas, when he was a huge cheerleader for the fucking Iraq war himself. Donald Trump was. It's a fucking stupid game. People like Candace Owens, people like Tucker Carlson, people like Donald Trump, they come out here and they act now like their entire political party, their entire political operation, and all the people that they staff in their cabinets weren't full-on supporters of Iraq. I swear to God, if she comes out here and acts like she was trying to tell people back in the day not to be fucking crazy. Like, are you kidding me? You literally worked for the Daily Wire until they shit-canned your ass like 6 months ago. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, fucking crazy.
Like, I'm supposed to feel bad for Candace Owens. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. There was this sort of media insistence. We didn't have social media. We didn't have other perspectives being given to us. There really was no sense of an independent media. But I look back on that and I realized I was almost brainwashed to believe that Muslim life had no worth. Thinking about how scared I was every time I saw a Muslim, wherever I was, whether it was an airport, anywhere. And I actually believe that the media in America was successful in dehumanizing Muslims. I'm not.
Yeah, and then you went and worked for that exact same apparatus for years and years and years. What the fuck's wrong with you? You literally, Gavin just literally mentioned, you literally made a fucking documentary simping for Derek Chauvin, where we all watched him kneel on a man's neck, kill him in broad daylight, choke him out to death in front of a bunch of other fucking pigs that did nothing to stop him.
Little girl anymore. Okay, I'm an adult. I am a woman. I'm a mother.
Now I hate Jews instead of Muslims. I've grown so much. Back then, I used to my misdirected hatred towards Muslims. So I didn't realize is that it's really Jews who are the deserving religion of that hatred.
7th, I was very due to give birth, looking on Twitter and seeing these children. These children happen to have the same complexion as my daughter because I have a mixed child, being blown up, and then having people tell me that I shouldn't care about that. And I said to myself, okay, I totally understand people wanting to have their hostages returned. I can totally understand people wanting to make sure that their family is safe. But what I cannot understand is how you think you are a good person when you devalue the life of a child. You are a monster. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're an American commentator. I don't care if you're a rich billionaire. I don't care if you're the average person on the street.
Wow, so brave, Candace. This is so wow. I'm glad you're waking up. This is so brave.
I'm just like against violence, and
I love children for the children, and maybe world peace while we're at it. Although if that inconveniences me, I'm going to change my mind.
You applaud one hostage being returned, and yet thousands of people who are similarly innocent were killed in the process, and you go, oh, well, too bad. You become a monster. And I know that there are so many people who agree with me in media who are scared to say that because they are fearful of having their jobs. They're fearful of losing their jobs, rather. So can you speak to exactly how you found out you were being terminated and on what grounds you were terminated?
Yeah, I mean, the email that I posted to Twitter is the entire record of contact that I've had with the Hill. So I usually worked Monday through Thursdays. We had just shifted through a Monday to Wednesday schedule at my insistence, in part because of how hostile the environment had become, not just on air with my co-host, who I'm, obviously the point of the show is for us to debate and we have a good working relationship off screen, but with the staff behind the scenes, new producers that had been hired who ostensibly were there to exert some broader editorial guidance over the show, but seemed to focus very specifically on minimizing the extent.
Yeah, so they went corporate media. They were like, you know what? I think we're taking this independent thing a little too far. Let's remind everybody who the parent organization is. Let's remind everybody that this is a for-profit enterprise, and Briahna, if you could cut that shit out, the progressivism, that'd be great. Why don't you give us a little more of that blue-haired liberal take?
To which we could cover the Israel-Palestine conflict. There were a number of indicators for months now that they were unhappy with the tenor of the show. Obviously, my co-host Robbie was there to push back. I don't know if they found his pushback to be inadequate, but they kept wanting to have specific kinds of guests on the show, which I, of course, was open to. I have never turned down a guest for ideological reasons. I cannot say the same for guests that were aligned with my ideological perspective and my co-host, I have to say. But I noticed that when they were trying to find guests that presented a pro-Israel point of view, unlike the kind of guests that I seek to bring on who have some kind of issue area expertise, let's say because they're a journalist, or let's say because they're a professor, or let's say because they're a politician, an elected official, they would bring on people who seem to just be internet actors who would come on and instead of taking questions from Robbie and I in a professional kind of interview style of format, would very quickly try to personalize the issue and want to have an argument with me about whatever tweet that they had last seen of mine that they didn't like, which obviously puts me in a really tough position as a host who wants to be gracious and sort of moderate and not get into a back.
And by the way, just in case it hasn't already been made clear, I 100% sympathize with Briahna for losing her shit a little bit, when confronted by that exact approach that she just outlined.
I don't even think she lost her shit. She just rolled her eyes,
right. Not
mildly.
Not lost her shit, but just reacted accordingly. Trust us. There's nothing worse than when you're running a fucking show, when you're hosting a show and you have a guest on your fucking platform and instead of engaging respectfully, they just start to fucking lecture you. You know what I'm saying? We talk about that with the call-in days when people would call in and just,
or go look at our Lee Camp video where that guy where he tries to take a swipe at us on his way out.
Yeah.
Gavin loses his fucking mind. That Gavin does get unhinged. Gavin's like, that's one of my favorite Vanguard moments ever. Was Gavin's just like, fuck this, I'm ripping your ass. And we've never been more vindicated. That's a take that aged like fine wine.
Yes.
He was literally trying to scold us and say the People's Party was the future. They never ran a candidate. Nick Briahna, known sex pest, and now he works for Warmonger, RFK. So yeah, basically a W for the Vanguard. That's right.
Yeah.
Undefeated over here at the Vanguard.
But yeah,
Stay
that is
on
an
top.
infuriating approach. Like, it's one thing if you really disagree with someone, you want to go in the lion's den and confront them on that issue, talk about your difference of opinion. But yeah, I also have no fucking tolerance for lecturing, for virtue signaling and pearl clutching. If we had someone on that took that approach with Zac and I would just, delete them from the stream immediately.
And forth with a guest, but the guests started increasingly coming on with this kind of ideology. So there were indicators like that. I got a message from on high that we were not allowed to interview Norm Finkelstein. I know you sat down with him for a really terrific interview that I watched, and I thought
Storm and Norman. That guy is a great interview, by the way. Although the dude doesn't give a fuck, man. And I found out that he tunes into our show. That made me even more intimidated. And then he called us out. He was like, "You guys seem scared." I was like, "Bro, I was fucking shit scared. I didn't want to piss him off. I didn't want him to get fucking angry. You think I can debate Norm Finkelstein? No, it'll just, anyway."
The disagreements don't come out until the second time you come on the Vanguard.
Exactly. That's after we've patted you on the ass and told you we liked your books and you're then we'll sneak one in.
Yeah.
We'll be like, so let's talk about trans activists in 2024, and then let's talk about all 85 genders.
It was really well done. And the argument was that he was a Holocaust denier. Norm Finkelstein, as you're aware, is someone whose parents both survived the Holocaust and knows the horrors of the Holocaust much more intimately.
Deranged to call that man a Holocaust denier.
crazy.
Absolutely unfathomably low maneuver.
And personally than most people alive today. And the final straw was when we got an indication that this most recent guest, the sister of a hostage, wanted to come on. It was pitched to me specifically that she wanted to come on to talk to me, not to be interviewed by both myself and my co-host, but that she wanted to talk to me. And to me, that was a clue that it was going to be another one of these interviews where a guest who has a really legitimate point of view, obviously, as someone who has been living in the limbo of not knowing whether or not someone she loves more than almost anyone else in the world is safe. That is a perspective we absolutely should have on the show. But I was worried that exactly what happened would happen and that she would turn this into a referendum on my own personal political views and try to play sort of both the position of a human being who's going through something really tough, for whom we should all have compassion, but also someone who is advancing a political ideology and advancing very specific untruths on a news show that it's my job as a reporter and journalist to push back on and fact check in real time.
Yeah, and I can't think of anything, grosser than utilizing the victimhood, the true victimhood of your sister to advance a political ideology. That shouldn't be the case. And you are absolutely correct that there does seem to be.
Wow, it's almost like Candace Owens doesn't have a separate political ideology that she's sympathetically using to support the people of Palestine. As chat pointed out, let's take a look at this banger from back in the day. Candace Owens, if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. And you're like, what the fuck? And we're like, yeah, this is a legitimate quote. Let's read it with its full context. She says, if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine, she said after she was asked about the word nationalism, according to BuzzFeed News, which first reported her remarks. The problem is he had dreams outside of Germany. So go ahead and kill all the Jews in Germany.
The problem is he was a globalist. That's literally what she's saying. No, he was a globalist.